Hunter.
I'm Kelsi.
And today we're here with Miss Linda Curtis Sparks, who is the director of the Zwolle Museum on the Bend. How are you doing today, Miss Linda?
I'm good. I'm happy today, Hunter. Good to be here with y'all.
Good to hear it. So we just had our grand opening on July 17th, and we wanted to kind of come highlight what was going on, what we had here, and talk to Miss Linda about how it got started and some of the contents and some of the history you can learn. So tell us about it, Miss Linda. How does this project get started?
I think there are many reasons it started. Years ago, the people that gave up their homes would have reunions, and people would bring pictures of the old home sites and that. So I think there was a seed planted probably a dozen years ago by Chris Rivers that the depot was sitting here empty. It would be lovely if all of that history could end up here someday. And then as we progressed, about 7 years ago, the Department of Economic Development asked the Tourist Commission if they would consider doing a cultural district here in Zwolle. And when we asked why, they said, well, Zwolle is one of the few towns in Louisiana that already has a festival ground. So to be a cultural district, you need to have culture and you need to have events. So they already had half of that equation. And of course, Zwolle Ebar is full of culture. And so we looked at that. At the same time, the Tourist Commission felt that we had been #1 lake in fishing for 2 years in a row. We wanted to develop possibly heritage tourism, another avenue of tourism. Plus, it was also the 50th year of Toledo Bend. And there were still people living that could tell the story. And it's a wonderful story of people, just common man, like Cliff Ammons, who was an FFA teacher, and John Godfrey, who was an attorney here, and 1,400 people from Texas and Louisiana just getting together and making a project happen. It took 20 years. It took a lot of perseverance and resiliency and faith, but they got it done. And there's no federal money in their final financing and their permanent financing. And the two river authorities have paid it off. So it's one of the most successful stories, I think, in the United States of people making things happen. Same thing when we were #1 lake for 2 years in a row. That didn't just happen. The Lake Association and SRA and many people, guides, different ones, pushed and pushed and pushed till we found a way to dig nursery ponds and stock nursery ponds and finally buy fingerlings. And I think we're probably up to like 44 million being stocked now in the lake by Texas Parks and Wildlife and Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries. But it took 25 years. It was people. It was people making it happen. And that story, I think, needs to be told.
Well, and that's kind of what's told up here in this main baggage area. It tells that story of how the people, how they came together, how the lake became #1. And you're right, it just didn't happen overnight. If you go through and read, you realize how many people had to come together to make that kind of thing happen.
Oh, yeah. And the beginning of the museum goes back to, well, you come into the museum and you go through a room that's basically the history of Zwolle. But you see in that you have missions that are a mile out from this depot that came in the mid-1700s. The road actually that passes right here by the depot is the middle road of the El Camino Real that went to Las Adayas, which was the capital of Spanish Texas. And so you have that beginning history. And you go into the logging room here where the river was used for logging during the 1800s. Then you come into the Toledo Bend area, and it starts with the river, and it comes through El Camino, and it comes through no man's land, and everything in this room ties back to that period. The people that gave up their land to build Toledo Bend, their deeds go back to when the federal government gave them free title after the Louisiana Purchase. And so it ties it all back to Zwolle and Sabine Parish and this region. Then we go into the development and why Toledo Bend was built. As far as I can remember, back to the time when we had 1,900 farmers in this parish. And it was a poor time. Sabine Parish is one of the poorest parishes in the state, along with DeSoto and Vernon, and along with the counties on the Texas side. It was a very poor regional area of Texas and Louisiana. And the men and women wanted something better for their children. And they truly used from no man's land, when Sabine Parish was inhabited in the first place, those people had a lot of resiliency and perseverance and faith to come in and establish this land in the beginning. But it carried forward into the development of this project.
You had to be quite tenacious to live here during the no man's land time.
You did. It was.
There was no law, no order. So to stay here then was, she's right, it definitely had to carry on.
And it was a very colorful time, you know, in our history. But those people, many of them stayed here, and many of them are the ancestors of people that live here now. It's interesting because you have two different groups that come in, I say, to the museum. You have the locals that are coming to learn their own history, and it's been excitable because we've been able to establish one lady last weekend found 6 pictures that belonged to her family. You know, I mean, it was exciting to her. We have tourists that drive in, wanting an experience to learn more where they're visiting. It adds value to their trip. So I think there's many reasons that people will end up using the museum.
Actually had somebody from Australia, 2 weekends ago?
We did.
That was exciting.
We're actually only open on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday from 10 to 3. But if we're working in here and we see people looking at the architecture of the building or just interested, we normally invite them in. And this couple did. They flew into Florida. They were driving across the United States, and they chose to stay at Toledo Bend for a few days. And so they were glad to learn the history of the lake and the history of where they were staying and that kind of thing. It added value to their trip. They'll think about it as they go through other states along their way.
Yeah,
Definitely.
And even somebody like me that grew up here, I think it's remarkable now that you don't learn all of this history in school. And so it's just, might be a morbid way of saying it, but eventually the people that know these stories and know how it all came to be aren't going to be here anymore. And if we're not like actively learning and preserving that, the story and the history, then, you know, 20, 30 years from now, like we wouldn't even know. And so I think it's really special now that we have it all in one place and you can read about it, but also feel it through the photos that y'all have here and the videos and the photography.
You really hit on a statement that I'd like to point out too, is that we had probably 8 different historians that help us write various stories here, and they will be a part of this museum. And I want to mention Weldon McDaniel especially because he's on the Texas side of Toledo Bend. He can tell you any river bottom story on the Sabine side or the Texas side. I'll name something that I may want to write about in the future, like whiskey barrels of the families that I promise you in this research we learned a lot. But prohibition in this area, going back to even to using the lignite from Coal Miners Creek, they used it to with their stills and making alcohol. And your grandfather years ago told me a story that happened out in front of my home where I live on Toledo Bend. There was a stagecoach stop, and he showed me. He first told me about who came and got whiskey and how they hauled it, that kind of thing. But he showed me where the corrals were and told me about the history of the people that live there. And it's excitable when other people can share that with you. Weldon McDaniel just is a wealth of information on the Louisiana and Texas side. We have other historians.
Ricky Robertson.
Ricky Robertson gave us history of this building. We knew that Ricky was really learned in the area of the maneuvers when we had 40,000 soldiers in here in 1940 preparing to go to World War II. But Ricky gave us a story where this building had General Eisenhower and Patton in it, and they were actually captured in this building by one of the last mock war of the maneuvers. They were captured by the last group of the United States Cavalry on horseback. And the horses crossed in the south, came up the western side of the Sabine River and attacked Zwolle from the west. and actually captured them in this building. I don't know of another soul in this whole parish that
would
knew that
know.
story.
Right.
And Ricky knew it. We will, I want to bring out another point too that I think is going to make the museum more special, is that we're developing a website. Weyerhaeuser is helping us fund that. And you'll have many QR codes on a lot of these panels. And I'll use Ricky's as an example. When you hold your phone up to that QR code, it'll take you maybe even to Stephen F. Austin's website, where Ricky has an abundance of additional stories on the maneuvers. Or it can bring you to the museum website, where you can read a bibliography that tells you a little bit more about either an event or a person, or it makes the story have a little bit more depth to it.
Yeah,
and so
that's great.
that will be another function. And then the third element of the museum is that we started digitizing all of our research 6 years ago. And that research will be put on the Louisiana Library digital site.
Awesome.
And so we're hoping that that story stays alive,
Certainly.
and we certainly hope too that we use the museum for young people in high school even. We have great sports teams in this parish. They have to live by the philosophy, if they really believe that you can do it, that you can win that game or win that state trophy.
Yeah.
Because we're very, very fortunate in football and basketball in this parish to have a lot of that. It's that philosophy that I want everyone, all those high school, all those junior high kids in our parish or others to realize that it was used to build something, and incorporate it in their own lives.
Yeah, not just build something, but build something that is generational, that will be here forever, that impacted this area so tremendously. You kind of in awe as you walk through and realize that just ordinary people, that they made it happen. And to do that without the federal government or help or aid just kind of makes you in awe.
It does, especially nowadays. I'm looking at Hunter, and I want to point out the picture of Joe Foster Patty behind him. We will have various exhibits that change in the museum.
Okay.
We hope to have probably 4 different main exhibits in a year. It may vary. Some years it may be 3, some years it may be 6. But right now we have Don Sepulveda's exhibits of his photographic culture and history of the 70s and 80s. Don was the communication director at Northwestern State University, retired several years ago, and he made these photos available to us. We have about 30 in here. He originally, I think in maybe 1985, had a showing of these at the old Martini store here. And then here we have them 40 years later showing at the museum. But I think most all but 1 or 2 of these people are deceased. But when you look at the character in these faces, I just love it.
They are amazing.
Really, they
Definitely
are
worth coming to see. And I remember at the grand opening when Mr. Don was speaking, he got emotional and just talking about how the way he captured these pictures was sort of like if you ask someone to tell a story and you just wait till that moment where they're like remembering something they heard as a child and their face lights up in a certain way. It touched me because I was like, that's not something you hear a lot of people talk about or put it in that perspective.
Yeah.
And then as you look at the pictures, you can really tell it's like a moment captured in time, and definitely worth coming to see here.
Well, that's some of the special feeling I think that locals are getting when they come in. He was talking about the individual in the portrait in the first room, and he had worked with that individual years and years ago, and that individual told so many stories about the Zwolle area that it made him feel that he belonged here himself. And we had a group that came in the other day, and it was a group of 6 or 8 women that came in at one time looking at these pictures, and it was just delightful to hear the stories that they could tell you about these people. But I think also that Don Sepulveda had a great talent, because from the time I have seen this picture, and it's one of my probably favorite 4 or 5 in the museum, I've just always felt like those pictures, some of them deserve to be on the front of Time magazine. I just felt like his talent was,
And they really
was that
could.
strong. Yeah. We're going to go into our next exhibit that we have planned is maybe a display of metallics. We do have one of our best archive items is the metallic that belonged to the Telaroo, who gave the first 20 acres to build Zwolle. And we are planning on displaying some others and getting into the tamale history in the area and the families that make tamales and things of that nature. And then go into the Chattahoochee arts and crafts the 1st of November and do some things that highlight those areas. So
that sounds great.
That is, and yeah, it's so admission is free, by the way, so there's no reason for you not to come and see it. Thursday through Saturday, 10 to 3. So everybody definitely needs to come down and learn some of your local history. If you're visiting, learn more about the area you're visiting. We have so much culture and history here that has never really been told. That's never been advertised like this. And so it's exciting. And I think everybody should at least come by at least once to check it out.
well, and there are some people that are returning 2 or 3 times. If y'all will let me mention one more thing.
One more thing.
Weldon McDaniel, I think gave us one of the best gifts in that he has brought notebooks of most of the families that lost their land. And many of those families are coming in. And that is a point that our visitors, especially local visitors, want to see. They want to see the families that were displaced. They want to see their farms. They want to see the cemeteries and the churches. And that and the metallics, I think, are 2 of the most valuable things that people have brought to us. And we encourage the public to do that. If they have stories or artifacts that they want to share with us, we want, of course, to include those.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, it was really nice coming here today to talk to you, Miss Linda. I'm loving the museum. I'm probably going to walk around and read some more. I've read most of it, but you always miss something. There's just so much to learn. So it's always nice to walk back through and just read over it again.
Yeah. Thank you for sitting down with us, Miss Linda. This is a special place that everyone should come see for sure.
We hope they will. Thank y'all today.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.